Hafiz said, "Now is the time to know that all that you do is sacred." Now, why not consider a lasting truce with yourself and God? Now is the time to understand that all your ideas of right and wrong were just a child's training wheels to be laid aside when you can finally live with veracity and love. Now is the time for the world to know that every thought and action is sacred. That this is the time for you to compute the impossibility that there is anything but grace. Now is the season to know that everything you do is sacred. What's the message in this? Now is the time to know that all you do is sacred. Everything you do is sacred. 14 billion years ago, there was this magical moment that happened where somehow in a void of no thing, nothing, there was no thing there, a seed was somehow created and went and grew up quickly to the size of a grapefruit. This infinitesimal seed. Oh, it's expanded to the size of a grapefruit and then kind of, we call that the Big Bang, and just all of a sudden spread out. All these different pieces of energy colliding with each other and eventually creating mass and material and eventually creating single cell organisms and eventually those being spread out and out and out and out until all of a sudden there comes Earth. And even then these single cell organisms are breathing enough oxygen where all of a sudden this ozone layer is created and multicellular organisms get created and then we're created. And I'm thinking and I'm conveying this to you right now with some level of awareness. Every thought we have, every action we do, every feeling we feel is connected with everything else that's out there. There's an incredible amount of science that speaks to the reality of emotional and behavioral contagion. That what we think and what we do actually has impact and ripple effects across people and things around us. And the people and things around us have that ripple effect back to us. So there's this sense of interconnection that's there. Everything we do is secret. How is it felt? How does it feel when you give? When you bake cookies and you give them to your neighbors or give them to your family and friends? How does it feel when you say kind things to other people? It feels pretty good. Plenty of science shows that compassion actually helps us feel and spreading and generating a sense of love and kindness actually has positive neurophysiological impacts. Why is that? It's really fascinating. Well, could it be because when we spread good stuff out there, it raises the whole in some way and raises ourselves with it? Could it be that there's some interconnection out there that shows us that everything we do is sacred? Everything we do matters? And is it true that maybe we don't know everything at the same time? Maybe we grew up in a culture or a family that told us what was right and what was wrong and who was right and who was wrong. And when we were right and when we were wrong towards ourselves, all of a sudden we get really self-critical towards ourselves with how we dress and what we say and what we think and what we can't do and what expectation we can't live up to. But all of a sudden, those were just a child's training wheels to be laid aside when you can finally live now with veracity and love. Isn't it time we loved ourselves? And then what happens when we bring more love into our lives, towards ourselves or towards other people? How do we feel? Is there a reality to the proof is in the eating of the pudding? If I am and putting those judgments, that old sense of what's right and wrong aside for a minute, and then I live with a sense of veracity and love, and it makes me feel good, and I actually feel good as a result of it. Is that not me tasting the pudding and then realizing that this is actually good? Considering that for a second, isn't it important to use our own experience as a barometer for what feels right and wrong? And setting those learnings aside and doing that instead. What does it feel like when we think about that? Every thought and action that we do is sacred. And what does it feel like to even consider to compute, as Hafiz says, the impossibility that there is anything but grace. Did the single-cell organisms that lived a couple weeks long think in their small lifetime, what's the point? I just live a couple weeks and nothing changes. Or did they realize that billions of years later, it would lead to these life forms that are here right now? Is it possible that what you think and what you do right now, you can't even possibly compute the impact you're having on future generations to come? There's a reality behind what we think about, how we think, and what we do, and how it really matters. And maybe there's a sense of letting go. And there's a sense that there is a sense of grace that's there. Everything you do is sacred. Everything you do is sacred.